Hello and welcome to the WorkWise for Screen podcast, created to help our screen industries better look after all the people their businesses depend on.
And stay on safe legal ground. It's part of a growing collection of practical resources and guidance that you can dip into without it taking you forever or costing you anything. It's supported by the BFI, awarding national lottery funding.
We'll be talking with people across production, distribution and exhibition, animation, VFX and gaming about the challenges to well-being we face when deadlines and budgets are tight, and how, most importantly, to improve things. We are your hosts, Tacita Small from the Small HR Company, the HR for Entertainment one,
and Keith Arrowsmith, the legal one, a creative industries solicitor and program director for WorkWise for Screen. Welcome to the WorkWise for Screen podcast. In this episode, we're exploring the rules around visas. If a business wants to bring someone to the UK from overseas to work on their project, then they may need to make sure all of the correct visa paperwork is approved. Now that sounds simple enough. However, immigration is currently a very hot political topic, and the rules around visas are constantly changing. As ever, we don't know every listener's specific circumstances, so we can only provide general guidance to introduce the subject. You may need to talk through your situation with a specialist before making any final decisions. Sally McEwen is an immigration law specialist at OTB Legal. She's been practicing immigration law for 19 years, and prior to becoming a director at OTB Legal, Sally worked in private practice for both niche immigration law firms and larger firms, and also spent time working for a not-for-profit organisation. She's a Level 2 accredited advisor and supervisor under the Solicitors Regulation Authority's Immigration and Asylum Accreditation Scheme. Let's hear from Sally now.
I mean, a business comes to you and says, I want to hire Mary, who currently works in Australia, on this project. Could you help me, please?
Yes, that's exactly right. So we help the business get the sponsor license if they don't have one. So a sponsor license would allow the business to issue a certificate of sponsorship to somebody, and then that certificate supports their application to come to the UK.
So anybody can become a sponsor of somebody who works abroad, but the process is that the organisation, first of all, has to apply to have that right.
You get the license, and then you have to demonstrate. You have to prove to the Home Office that the vacancy that you're offering is a genuine one. So it can't be filled by somebody who's already here in the UK and so a member of the settled workforce. I think the screen industry has got a slight advantage, if I'm honest, over other businesses, because it is more than one route to bring somebody in for you guys. So you could have a skilled worker. So a skilled worker now has to be, the role has to be a graduate level role. So you don't have to have a degree, but it has to be at that level. So your producers and your directors and kind of film editors and those types of people would be eligible for a skilled worker visa. You have the advantage, I think, of being able to get what's called a creative worker license as well. So you've got those kind of unseen staff that make everything pop. Your makeup artists, your costume designers, maybe your consultants. If you're, making a program about crime, you might need a consultant who knows about the criminal justice system in Sweden or something, And those people tend to come to the UK for time-limited, very specific projects. And you don't have to be at this degree level to come in as a temporary creative worker. So you would have more options than, say, an engineering firm to bring people in, and particularly bring people in at those, what the Home Office would consider to be lower skill levels.
Can I check, Sally? Often in our sector, there's a big difference between if we're looking to bring in skills and experience of someone who's going to be employed by the screen business, or whether it's going to be a freelance contracted arrangement. Does that make a difference in the visa world as well?
Absolutely. So the UK government had introduced the global talent visa, and global talent applicants are individual applicants, and they have to have a kind of global presence. They need to be a leader in their field. And for the screen industry, they are seeking endorsement from PACT, which is a kind of underneath the Arts Council. So there's two levels of talent, if you like, that the Home Office will consider. So global talent, you will be a world leading producer, or an actor, or a sound engineer, or one of these sort of type of roles, or you can have the potential to become a world leader. So that's the kind of global promise. But when you bring somebody in on a global talent visa, I mean, it would be the individual applicant that makes the application for endorsement, and then that endorsement supports the application to come to the UK, so supports entry clearance. And as a business, you then don't have the responsibilities that you have when you sponsor a worker, because that global talent migrant can work anywhere. They can set up their own business. They can act as a consultant, or you can employ them. But it's a much, much more flexible visa. And because it's much more flexible, with very favorable settlement time periods, it's very difficult to get. If you've got the Home Office have a list of eligible prizes. So if you have a BAFTA or an Olivier Award, or an Oscar, or a Brit Award, something like that. So they publish a list on the website. If you have one of those awards, then you don't need to apply for endorsement. You can just apply to the Home Office straight away for your Global Talent Visa. And the fact that you have won this award means that you don't need to go through that endorsement process.
So give us a feel for the kind of typical timeline that you'd see in this kind of sector, Sally. Is it something we need to allocate a few days to, a few weeks to? When do we start this process?
You're probably looking more like months, but it will depend on the visa that you're applying for, and it will depend on whether the company is sponsoring that visa, or whether you are an individual who's applying for global talent. If you are an organization that does not yet have a sponsor license, I think probably 3 months is a reasonable time frame for you to gather all the documents and get the decision. There is a priority service, but obviously everything costs more when you go for priority. This is a Home Office cost. We don't charge extra. But you can then get a decision within 10 working days. And then bizarrely, if you're making an application for somebody who's already in the UK that requires sponsorship, the published timescales on a standard application are 8 weeks. And then you have the priority service, which again brings it down to a week. And sometimes super priority is available, which is much more expensive. And that brings it down to 1 working day. In terms of the endorsement process, this is the process that takes the time. Because the evidence that you need to submit is very specific. So, you need letters of recommendation from people who are recognized themselves in the field. You need evidence of your performance, or, depending on kind of what your route for global talent is. And of course, then you've got to go through, the PACT assessment as well if you're film and television. So that is a lengthy process. And so you're probably looking at close to 5 months for global talent, I would say.
This is one of the areas of my work as HR that gives me the most stress. The level of responsibility it feels like to get this right has always weighed really heavy on me. So whenever I've had to do anything around visas, I'm like, oh my goodness, no. Why? It's got to be done, but it's really tricky. And people's lives are in your hands, whether they can enter or not. Families are impacted, the productions are impacted, the work is impacted. Do you have any recommendations as to how people can best cope with the process that is just the process, because it is so stressful and so much does weigh on it?
Get a lawyer. The process is so complicated now, and particularly in the skilled worker route. We've had, over the last 18 months, we've had 3 sets of very, very significant changes to the rules. And so instead of making the immigration laws simpler, which is the goal of every government, they're just much more complicated now. And the tables that there's table 1, 1A, 2, 2A, 2AA, there's the temporary shortage list, there's the immigration salary list, there's the skilled workers, it's crazy the amount of information that you need to kind of consider now, depending on the status of the person you want to sponsor and where they are. Are they here already, or do you need to bring them in? And so it's really, really quite a difficult process to manage if you are not an immigration lawyer now.
When you say, use an immigration lawyer, that straight away rings bells in my head and makes me think, oh my goodness, how much is this going to cost? So what sorts of costs do you think we need to factor in when considering this is a process we have to follow to get the talent that we want into the organisation to support us on what we're making?
Quite honestly, the legal fees pale into insignificance when you look at the cost of a visa for somebody now, which again, I think is why it's important to get somebody who knows what they're doing, because the costs are eye-watering to bring somebody to the UK now. If you had a company that did not have a sponsor license and wanted to bring a skilled worker to the UK, so you were going for just that skilled worker license, I would factor in about 12,000 for that first. So the application for a sponsor license, and then there are ongoing costs of sponsorship. I mean, we say to our clients when we're applying for a new sponsor license for a business, for example, is say, this is the real work actually starts when you get your license, because there is so many reporting and record keeping obligations that you have to keep on top of as a sponsor. If you're not responsible with your sponsor management system, you will lose the ability to sponsor people. The Home Office say it is a privilege, and so that's when the real work starts. I did a visa application for somebody a couple of weeks ago who had a wife and 2 children, and they want to sponsor him for 5 years, and it's over £30,000, and that's just in visa fees. That's not including the certificate. It's a lot of money.
And what's the gamble? How often are visas approved? Or are you fairly confident if you've been able to provide the right evidence at the right time that it's more than likely to go through? Or is there a gamble?
I think, well, I mean, nothing's 100%, because obviously if it was, I would be retired. But I think the issues occur before you get to the visa application in this kind of area of immigration law. So where you will fail is the endorsement process. You won't be endorsed. The Arts Council or Pact won't think that you meet the requirements to come to the UK as a global talent, or somebody who has the potential to become a global talent migrant. If you issue or apply for a certificate and the Home Office rejects your application for a certificate because they don't, the easiest way for the Home Office to refuse a company at the moment is to say that the vacancy is not a genuine one. And we're seeing that quite a lot at the moment, with the focus on being a reduction in net migration. And so it's not getting the certificate. Once you've got the certificate, or once you've got the endorsement, prospects of success are very, very high, 95% at least. The only way a visa would be refused is usually if the migrant hasn't disclosed some previous breach of immigration law, or some minor criminal offence, or disclosure at that visa stage is really, really important.
If we've just heard about a project that's going to mean us filming abroad, is that the kind of process that we can follow, knowing how the UK system works, or is that as complicated a process as dealing with the British system?
So all countries, all sovereign states have their own immigration system, and they're all slightly different or wildly different in some cases. You've got Australia that's got a kind of a much more pure points-based system than the one that we have. H-1B visa in the States, the sort of highly skilled US visa. We have inquiries from people who say, "Oh, I've got my H-1B visa for the States. Can I come here as a global talent?" No, you can't. You've got to go through a whole different process. And your documents that you submitted for your H-1B visa are not going to be the same as the documents that you will need for your endorsement with PACT.
What are the most difficult parts, you say, Sally, of the process? I've got my own view and opinion, having done it a few times before, but what would you say are the difficult parts that you need to pay attention to, even if you are giving this responsibility to somebody else to do for you? Because you can't just shirk all responsibility.
No.
You have to get involved.
And kind of you as an HR professional, you will need to be kind of frank with us about the job description, for example. So you've talked about those standard occupation classification codes. It is a minefield, and there is no one code for every single role in the world, because it would just be a completely unworkable system. So when we are assessing job descriptions and looking at those SOC codes and the coding tools that are provided by Warwick University now, we are looking for, I guess I would say, about a 50% match between the day-to-day activities of your worker and the SOC code. You have to be so careful not to exaggerate the role to bring them up to this RQF level 6 graduate position, but also you can't minimize the responsibilities of that person to bring the salary down, because as we know, salaries have risen. The increase in the minimum salary for sponsorship increased very significantly in April 2024, and it's gone up again this year. So that now your base rate salary for a skilled worker is 41,700, but if they're a CEO, it leaps up to 84,100. So these are significant numbers that we're talking about. So you have to be really careful when you're assigning the job code. So you need that sweet spot of 50%, because the Home Office have employed a lot more compliance officers now. So compliance is king, and we have seen a massive increase in license revocations over the last year. And a compliance officer will go into a company and they will want to interview the key personnel, so the people on that license that are responsible for it, but they will also want to interview the workers. And if you're, sound engineer on your creative worker license is actually making the tea all the time, then you will just lose your license. It's a light trigger. And once you've lost it, it's very difficult. There will be a cooling off period, but even after that cooling off period, it's very, very difficult to get it back. You have to have a whole sea change in your key personnel, I think, and address the fact that the license was revoked before. But these are the steps that we've taken to, mitigate the problems that we had last time. And we have a whole new set of people who are going to be responsible for it. So it's really difficult now.
And I'm going to ask you, Sally, to polish your crystal ball. If it's so difficult now, do you think it's going to get easier in the short term, or do you think it's going to become more complicated?
I think it will depend on where we get to with the net migration figures. And it's really important to remember that at the end of every application is a person, and they have aspirations for their career, and they have a family maybe, and that it's their life that is affected by what you do when you apply for that visa for them. You kind of have to focus on the end result, really, and just think about the person that it's going to affect, and get legal advice, on making the application, because the cost of getting it wrong can be significant. If your application is just rejected, that's really annoying, and you've lost the time in that case. But if it's refused, then there is a cooling off period, which means you won't be able to apply again straight away. So that, there are the consequences for getting it wrong are quite significant.
There are so many elements to this that getting something wrong could very easily not be your fault also. It could just be checking a wrong box or a wrong code that you thought was correct and actually is incorrect. And then something's denied or delayed, and in a space where currency, money, budget, and time is up against it, you are up against, those factors alone create a lot of stress.
And one of the temptations will be to throw it into one of the AI apps to try and get some help to do it that way. But you and I know that the answers you get back from AI might not be up to date, or might not be specific enough, or might not help you identify the right boxes to tick. So it's about picking the right tools and the right level of experience and expertise that you need in order to deal with a really complex process that changes faster than we might like, that has to be adjusted to meet the kind of political aims of the day, that might well be different to other rules and regulations that have changed since last time you looked at it, and will cost money if it gets off track or goes wrong or misses the deadline. The rules and regulations about visas changes regularly, but we do have some basic tools on the WorkWise platform that you can access on the internet. So we've got some general guidance about the right to work checks that everyone should be doing. And we've also got the update about some of the new visa rules that came in recently. And we'll keep visiting that and bringing more information as we go. Thanks for listening to the WorkWise for Screen podcast, supported by the BFI awarding National Lottery funding.
Our online platform provides lots of easy to understand information and invites to our events. Visit our website at workwiseforscreen.org.uk and register for the latest updates.
Please follow us on social media and join in this crucial conversation.
And contact us with suggestions for future episodes, or if you can, support the programme in any other way. This podcast is produced by 1860. Music is by Benjamin Squires.